Hi, everybody. Let's see if this is working. If you could just leave a message in the comments, if you can hear me and see me. And I'm so happy to see so many of you here on a Sunday afternoon. I get nervous when I start these. Yep, like you can. If everybody wants to introduce themselves in the comments and say where you're from, we'll just let everybody slowly come in as I get going. And then I'll start telling you a few things. Oh, it's fun to see everybody joining in. I see people from New York City and old friends and new friends. Got a friend from Pennsylvania. So today I met my friend Thea for a hike. She was driving back from Ohio, dropping her daughter off at school, and I drove up Skinny Atlas Way. And I was like, I found us a little waterfall. It's like a mile hike. It'll be perfect. We'll give you a little break, and then we'll jump right back in and go back into, she'll drive the rest of the way to Massachusetts, and I'll come home. And we meet in this parking lot, kind of in the middle of nowhere, and we hike up to the waterfall. And the stream that the waterfall was on was like very, very active, not a lot of water. And we get to the waterfall, and you all know that I'm like from the land of waterfalls, right? We get to this like 10-foot drop, and there's like this trickle of water, and there's this giant like viewing platter to see the waterfall from. And it was, shall we say, not very exciting. It was like a waterfall. So that was part of my day. And then I'm here with you guys for the afternoon, and I maybe, depending on timing and wind, might get to go try something out this evening. We will see. So many fun friends showing up on you. I'm great to hear that. I just checking comments quickly. I can tell you guys can see me. So you guys know I'm going to try really hard to not read comments while I'm talking to you. I have a whole list of things to go over with you. Some people let me know some things they wanted to know, and I'm going to jump right into that. But feel free to be chatting in the comments. And at the end, depending on how long this goes, I'll try and do some Q&A, okay? But you can always ask me questions later on over on Facebook or Ravelry or in the comments below. It's a big list. It's actually, there's this list, and this list. I made notes. The first thing I want to tell you about, Lois asked a great question. So did you guys see the photo that was like the holding page, the title card for the live? Was me wearing this gray Tosca right here, this cropped worsted weight gray Tosca. And I was wearing that in front of a mural that is in Trumansburg, which is my hometown in the Finger Lakes region of upstate New York, outside of Ithaca. And that mural is like on one side of the Napa. It's right around the corner from Main Street. And I've always taken it for granted. I've known a few of the modern people in it, but I never really knew who was in it. So when we were taking photos, I was like, Jamie, that's my photographer, Jamie Love. I was like, let's take some photos in front of the mural. It's so colorful and bright, and maybe the gray of the sweater will like pop against it, and it'll be really fun. And Bella was there helping me, which is why in all of those photos, when I have that fun, happy look on my face and I'm looking to the side, I am looking at my daughter and smiling at her because she's saying something super snarky to me, because that's her role at photo shoots. So Bella got on her phone really quickly and looked up about the mural. So that mural is called A History of Parts. It was painted, I think, in 2016, maybe a little earlier than that. When I'm done with the YouTube live, I'll give you guys some notes for this, and I'll include a webpage that has more information about the mural. But it's a history of parts because it's basically showing different pieces of Trumansburg's history over time, a little bit in the voice of like Diego Rivera, the way that he did murals that told the story of a place. So what you can see behind me, behind me, and I believe to my right, is Abner Treeman and another founder of Trumansburg. And then right next to them is Lloyd Darcy. Sorry, I'm reading my notes because I knew I would remember everything. Right next to them is Lloyd Darcy, who was the first Black homeowner and voter that lived in Trumansburg. And then right behind me is Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Sojourner Truth, who were two incredible abolitionists and women rights parts of the women's right movement. And then going on from there, I believe it's Walt Whitman. And you're like, why is Walt Whitman in there? And I think they think he stopped by to get a beer at some point in Trumansburg. And so he made it on the mural, and then it goes on into more modern people. But at some point I could take a whole photo for you guys, but I'll give you a link below. And it's really fun and bright, and it's for such a small town, we have a very interesting history, and I'm learning about it all the time, just like that on this little piece of paper. So we did that. So this week, the Tasca tunic released. I had released the collection at the beginning of August, maybe end of July, with a baby pattern and a kid pattern. And if you guys, some of you might remember this, and some of you might be new to my log and not know about this. Right before we went into lockdown, when the pandemic started, I went to a vintage store. It was basically like my last normal non-mask outing before everything shut down, back when we didn't know restaurants were going to close and stores were going to close. And I went to a vintage store and I found this sweater, and it's crocheted, and it's crocheted side to side, which is, side to side construction is my thing. And it had this amazing square neck. You can see the square neck on it, right? And it's worked from one shoulder over to the center, and then split for the neckline, and then the second shoulder. And it's got a neckline and armbands. It doesn't have those side panels that I do. It's 100% cotton. It is heavy as all get out. And it is actually not super flattering on me. It's so, because the fabric is so heavy. I'm not going to try it on right now, but it's quite boxy. It's a little too big for me, and it's just a little. Crochet doesn't have the drape that knit has sometimes when it's knit this densely. But this was my inspiration. Like, I bought this because, of course, I bought it. I believe. Let's see how much it was. It was $24. It was a work expense. I think the IRS would approve. And I brought it home and was like, wow, that's really cool. I'm inspired. Maybe I'll do some kind of summer top or whatever. And then as the pandemic happened and we were like stuck at home, I kept feeling like I needed pockets everywhere I went in my house. I was like, I need pockets for my tissues. I need pockets for my phone. I can't find this. I need particularly my chapstick in the winter. I need to have my chapstick on my side all the time. So I was like, what if I took this and I turned it into something that looks like what I would design, with side panels, the way I use side panels on side-to-side construction, which I find very flattering, with pockets. And that became a rabbit hole that I have been working on basically since April. So that collection now has 6 designs in it. It has the baby pattern, which I have that one right here. It's so cute. The baby pattern does not have pockets on it because it's too small. There is a toddler version. The toddler version does have pockets, and I'm going to show that to you in a second to talk about the construction. I know some of you are super familiar with my side-to-side Novus construction, but many of you aren't, so I want to go over it. There then is a worsted weight version of Tosca and a sport weight, and both of those come both in cropped length and tunic length. So there's 6 patterns total in the collection, and I have an idea for a 7th because of course I do, but we'll just see about that. It's a tiny bit crazy, but I get to do crazy sometimes because, it's me. I am wearing the sport weight version of Tosca in the cropped length, and this is knit in Barrett Wool Company Woolens, which is a new yarn of theirs that is spun at Harrisville. And I chose, what did I choose? 4 different colors total. I chose a base color and then 4 different contrasting colors that, thank you. Someone just said they like my skirt. Thanks. I'm not reading the comments. And I decided I could play with vertical striping. And I did have a fair number of ends to weave in, but I give you guys information in the pattern for how to carry the yarns up the side by working a little bit of I-cord down on the bottom, and that makes things a little bit easier to work. So I have notes for that if you need them. There were ends to weave in, especially up at the neckline, which was a tiny bit annoying, but ends happen. So striping won't be for everybody. If some of you have had a chance to go look at Tosca on Ravelry, you will see that there are some amazing test knits knit by my testers. I had the biggest test I've ever done with this project. I know some of my testers are here now. So if you guys want to chime in at all with what you did, you can feel free to do that in the comments. But we used Slack for the first time, and I've heard about Slack. It's a workplace that's used in corporate environments, and I had worked with a few people, so a few colleagues on something, and used Slack with them. And the learning curve was very quick, and it's a great way to communicate, but it's also a really great way for keep track of changes that need to happen to patterns, and I can link to the pattern in Google Drive, and it just made the workflow working with 20 people who were working 4 different patterns at the same time totally amazing, and I think we all really ended up enjoying it in the end. I know I did. For me, it was the best test in terms of keeping track of things and not being like a space cadet all the time. My testers worked really hard on this. There were a few things we needed to clarify to make easy for you all, and I'm thrilled with the final project, and I don't know how I could have done it without them, so thank you guys so much. I'll always do tests. In the future, I do calls for them. Don't ever be offended if I don't choose you for a test. I can't choose everybody. That's just an impossibility. But thank you to those of you who were able to do this one with me. I try to mix things up, so if you've done some, you might not get to do some again. The next project I'm working on, I know it has a little brioche in it, and it might be wearable. And I know I just saw somebody's name here who is definitely going to be a tester for that because it's a fun one, and she's up for it. She can handle me in my crazy brioche sweater mode. Right behind me is Tasca in the worsted tunic length version, and that I knit in Catskill Farms Saxon Merino Heather, and they are being totally awesome, and through the end of today they offered 10% off on their website. You don't need a coupon code. So the story with Catskill Merino Farm is I met Dominique at Vogue Knitting Live a bunch of years ago, and she and her partner worked a farm together, and Eugene went to Australia when Australia first allowed Saxon Merinos to be exported out of the country, and he got 5 rams and ewes, I believe, and brought them back and started a breeding program in the Catskills with this absolutely gorgeous merino that is super soft. It wears well. It doesn't wear amazingly, so I knit it a little bit on the dense side in hopes that will help it maintain its integrity. I wish for a farm yarn, I wish you guys I want to just go right in there so you guys can feel this. The color's a little bit blown out as I'm coming close to you. It's a little bit more saturated in real life, which you can see as I come back a little bit. But this has a heathered yarn, so it's gray and white before they dye it, and then Dominique dyes it a multitude of colors, and the colors that it comes in are stunning. They also have a Saxon Merino worsted that is not a heather that would also work for this pattern. So either of those, if this yarn is intriguing to you, like if you're wanting to knit a Tosca for virtual Rhinebeck, which was kind of my goal for this originally when I started, I was like, this will be a great Rhinebeck sweater. And now Rhinebeck's not happening because the whole world is canceled right now. I know, I think it helps to go in. I just saw somebody said that the yarn is stunning when you go in like that. So I'll focus in and out a little bit more so you guys can see that. But go check out their yarns, especially today since they have a discount. And supporting Dominique, she's on the farm alone now. Eugene passed away. She just moved all the sheep over to a new farm, and she absolutely loves her babies. If you follow her on Instagram, she posts photos of them and tells a story about them, and she is a thoughtful, kind, unique woman who I feel super strongly about supporting. And that's what I do when I buy yarn. I find people I want to support, like Susan Anderson and her Yarn Line Woolens is absolutely stunning. I want to be Susan when I grow up. She is just the warmest, kindest, most genuine, and I'm saying all the right words. Yay, Susan, love you. Here's a skein if you want to see. Let's do a close up with that woolens because I forgot to do that, and now we know that that's amazing and gorgeous. Wow. And her tags are so super cute. I love them. See if that's like focused in there for you guys so you can see that. So I just saw Susie said that my pattern is highlighted on their website. So you'll see it right there. The yardage is all up on my website and on Ravelry if you need to look for that. I'll tell you guys about purchasing the collection in a second. Finally, the third Tasca that I had help knitting, but I wished I had knit it because it's amazing, is this gray, dark gray version of Tosca, which I knit in Snufnug. And the reason that I worked with Snufnug, I found this yarn, you guys can see it's an alpaca and wool and extra fine merino there. Bummold is cotton, I believe, and merino. Now I'm confused. I'm going to have to look that one up in English in a sec. Somebody in comments look up what Bummold means for Snufnug, if that is cotton or wool. I thought it was two different kinds of wool, that it doesn't have cotton in it. But what Snufnug is basically a core that alpaca and wool are blown into. So it makes a fiber that is a lot like Letlopi, but it is not scratchy in the slightest. It is like this cottony, fluffy air. It's so yummy. I do think Bummold is cotton, not wool. So it's alpaca, cotton, and wool. It is a warm yarn. And I believe the cotton is that core that the alpaca and the wool are blown into. There, I just said the same thing 7 times, 12 different ways. So Snufnug, the reason I designed with this is because I was going to design something with it for the cruise that I was doing this summer, the Ultimate Knitting Cruise, because we were going through Copenhagen, and this is a Danish yarn, and I was trying to do designs that used yarns from every country we were going to: Denmark, Norway, Iceland, Shetland, which is Scotland. And this was the yarn I was going to use for Denmark. And I really suggest you guys knitting with this at some point, even if you just make a cowl. I have 2 skeins right here, one left over from the sweater and one that I had bought earlier. And I think just doing some fun, lightweight, awesome, voluminous winter cowl in these 2 colors would be really scrumptious. So I've got these kind of lined up for that at some point. But I think I got the yarn from the Yarnery, but there's a few different places online that carry it. So put that one on your list. Thank you, Lisa, for checking that out for me. I feel like I've got y'all in the comments to help me out while I go spaz on y'all. This is a cropped weight worsted version of Tosca, pockets on the side. This will be part of my uniform this winter. I think all 3 of these in rotation. And then I already want more. Like I would do one in Letlopi. I think a Letlopi one, there's this pumpkin-y orange color that my local yarn store has that is absolutely scrumptious. And I could really see one doing in that. It would be very warm vest for the winter. I get really cold. We were talking about these pockets in a Zoom the other day, and somebody was like, it's a mask pocket. It's a tissue pocket. Like, what's in your pocket? So many things. Do you guys want me to talk about the construction a tiny bit? The other thing I want to talk about yarn is other yarns you could use. So if you live in a warmer climate and you are not interested in a heavyweight merino wool and you are not interested in this alpaca wool cotton, this yarn I think is a great idea. This is from Emma's Yarn, and Emma is the daughter of Laura, who owns 4 Pearls in Winter Haven, Florida. I taught down there last year, and they just released this yarn that's a 50% superwash merino, 50% cotton. It's a DK weight yarn. I think it would make an absolutely gorgeous fabric for a Tosca. And it's got that cottony feel, but the merino keeps it a little bit supple and elastic, which is really, really nice. So it's a good balance between the two. Also, my personal favorite yarn, Anzula Vera. I suggest it for almost every pattern I design. Vera would also be an excellent choice. A little bit more expensive. It's a silk linen yarn, and it would make a great summer weight Tosca. And maybe I'll end up making one of those by next year with some lace in it or something. See everybody chiming in with what Bomold means and Bomold is cotton. So we took care of that together. Another yarn that I think would make an absolutely beautiful Tosca is Kettle Yarn Company Bale DK. Bale DK is a yak, silk, and merino yarn. So this one still will be a little bit on the warmer side, but it's lighter weight. Those of you in a warmer climate, don't make the worsted weight version. Make the sport weight version and go more towards sport weight with your yarn choice. You'll have more air in between the stitches. Therefore, things will be a little bit more breathable and your sweater will be a little bit drapier all at the same time. So bonus on all of those points. I hope that helped out a little bit with yarn choices for Tosca. Definitely feel free to ask me questions. So one of the things that we're doing with Tasca is I released this collection, and if you purchase the collection, I believe it's $20 up until September 1st. You have access to Zooms with me to go over sizing and gauge swatching and yarn choices. And those will be more intimate experiences. We'll be talking with each other. You'll have a measuring tape with you. We'll measure you. We'll look at the schematics, talk about what you want to do. I'm going to try to keep those Zooms to like under 10 or 15 people. Right now, when you buy the collection, there's a separate PDF that shows all the dates that those Zooms are happening. You just have to email me and tell me your top 2 picks. I know a bunch of you have emailed me already with your date choices, and I'll sit down tonight and send emails and let you guys know which date you have. I was kind of waiting to see how many people were going to come in for what date before spreading that out. And if I need to, I'll add more dates if those start filling up. But I think it's a fun way to help you get going with a knit along. So from right now up till September 1st, you should be, if you want to knit Tasca, looking for yarn, doing gauge swatches. I've put lots of tips and tricks up in Ravelry for how to do that. And on September 1st, we'll be casting on. I'm thinking about, and I'm not entirely committing to it, but I'm thinking about doing a new version of my provisional cast-on video to kind of go over all the ways you can do for provisional cast-ons, partially because my provisional cast-on video it's not young. It's on the older side, and there's some things I feel like I could refresh a little bit, and I'm just better at shooting videos than I was 5 or 10 years ago. So I'm thinking about that. If not, there is a video for doing provisional cast-on, which is what you start with for this pattern. I'm going to take the sweater out of my lap. I am going to grab this to tell you quickly about the construction of Tosca. This week, I will be doing a blog post that will have some line drawings of the construction of Tosca so you understand exactly how it's worked from start to finish. Yes, I'm going to go over, Susie just said when I do the provisional cast on, I should go over how not to lose the stitch at the beginning and the end when you unzip it. And I think that's a great idea to go over in detail. I'll explain why you lose that and how to fix it. So this is the toddler, I believe this is the 2T size, and it's just a great way to show you guys how the construction works. This one has seed stitch on the side panels and seed stitch on the bottom border and garter stitch up at the neckline and armholes. That is the way all of the Toscas are done. So it's exactly the same for all of them. What you're doing is casting on for the right size, and you use a provisional cast on, which means you end up with live stitches on your needle to come back to later, and you work across the right shoulder. Those are the longest rows of the whole pattern because you're working up the front, over the shoulder, and down the back, and back up and down, and back up and down. There's not that many of them, especially on the smaller kid sizes. And then you split for the neckline, and you have a separate ball of yarn for the front and the back. And you work across the front and the back. You can work them 2 at a time. You can work them 1 at a time. I believe when I did this one, because of the striping and I didn't want to have so many balls of yarn, I worked the front and then I put those stitches on a holder and I worked the back and then I rejoined up. that's totally up to you. You get to take control of your knitting in that place. And then when you've worked across the neckline, you rejoin and you have just one ball of yarn and you work across the left shoulder. Again, you've got those very long rows as you're working back and forth because you're working across the sweater. And then you put the stitches for the sleeve, the armhole onto a holder, and you come over here and you start to work the side panel. First, you have to knit the pocket lining, which is inside here. You have stockinette stitch facing, and then you join that pocket lining to these live stitches on your needle, and you begin to work a side panel back and forth, eating up the stitches from the front and the back as you work up it. What I did for you guys on that is shoot a separate video for you that's linked to in the pattern that shows how to do the pocket integration. I was a big fat meanie in my test, and I wouldn't give everybody a video for doing the pocket integration because it's super important to me that patterns can stand alone and not need a video for you to be able to knit them successfully. Some of the testers had a more frustrating time than others getting through those words because some of us are like visual learners, like we need to see it, and some of us are auditory learners, right? We need to hear it. Some of us need to read it. But I wouldn't give them the video because it was super important to me that those words be correct. And I find that the moment you have a video, you can follow it and be like, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do. That's easy. And then you just do it and you're not actually like reading the words word for word. So the patterns have been very well tested. That's my way of saying that. After you work that side panel, then you have just the live stitches from the side panel left on the needle. You put the stitches from the armhole back onto the needle. Smaller sizes, you need to work on double pointed needles. And you just like work a little garter stitch edging onto the sleeve right there. And then you bind off. You do the exact same thing on the other side of the sweater. And then finally, you pick up stitches for the neckline and you work it with these little mitered corners right there. I think you can see those little mitered corners at the edge. And that brings the neckline in. What you can do with the neckline if it's hanging down too low or your shoulders aren't quite wide enough, that's a great place to slap in more rows if you need them to bring it up a little bit. One or two of the testers ended up deciding to do that. That's a place that if your stitch gauge is loose, so you have less stitches per inch, making your neckline bigger, that testers found that they needed to add in more rows to kind of like make up for that. And that just solves that geometry problem right there. I hope that all makes sense to you. It really helps me as a designer if you go to Ravelry and you hang out on the project pages and you look at all the test knits and you favorite things and like them. The testers love getting, I know I love getting comments on my projects on Ravelry, and I get comments more than some people might, but not as much as other people, certainly. I'm not comparing. But I know that it feels when I get an email in my inbox that says that I have a comment on one of my projects or one of my designs, it brings me so much joy, especially when it's a nice comment. But if it does that to me, it definitely does it to other people too. So when you're there looking at people's tests to see maybe what size they made or what modification they made or what notes they have, leave them a comment, tell them how great it looks, ask them a question. That kind of interaction is so fun for all of us. If you have questions, post in Facebook. The Facebook group is also a great place to post stuff and talk about your projects. There's been some gorgeous projects posted in my Facebook group lately that have been absolutely a blast to see. Really fun to see those. So there's my little Ravelry thing. It helps me, it helps you. It's so fun to see what everybody's knitting. Keeps us sane and busy. I'm going to read my notes for a second, make sure if I covered everything. I talked about the Zooms. So to be in the Zooms, you have to have purchased the collection. You can purchase the patterns individually if you want, but you won't have access to those Zooms that will set you up for doing the knit along. My goal for this is to have sweaters ready for a virtual Rhinebeck, and then we can all virtual Rhinebeck together, and maybe we'll have like a little thread in my Ravelry group where we show each other what we're buying at virtual Rhinebeck and hang out just like we would when we go to Rhinebeck. We always have a hangout every year with everybody. And this way more of us could do that together, which I think would be really fun. It's one of those ways of being together, apart, but together, right? The only thing I forgot to tell you about was the naming of Tosca, which is super funny. So Tosca, I didn't have a name when I first named it. It was like the pocket tunic. And that was kind of long on the pattern when I was sending stuff to my tech editor, Kate Atherley. So I affectionately called it the Punic. And Kate left a comment for me in my pattern because she leaves me awesome, fun comments in my patterns. And she was like, honey, I really hope that that's not its official name. Because Punic just sounds like one step away from pubic, right? Maybe not appropriate. So I was like, okay, I'm not naming it Punic. I know, but it's so right because it's just what you do with pocket and tunic. And I wasn't going to do tocket because that didn't really make sense to me. See how I'm trying to mash up words there? And then I started to look up words for pocket in other languages because Polka, which I released a few years ago, was a side-to-side sweater that had pockets. It's a lovely, like, big jacket cardigan. I know some of you have knit Polka. And where I lost myself. So that Polka means pocket in Irish. So I was like, okay, what other languages? So I looked up, and in Swedish, Polka meant flicka. And I was like, oh, I like that. I think that's a great name. I'm gonna go with that. And I put that in my tester group. And one of my testers, Andrea from Germany, Andrea from Germany, was like, so that is very close to a curse word in German, and I don't think you should use that word. And I was like, oh man, now what am I gonna do? And then Kelly, my dear friend she's from outside of Buffalo and Florida, she was like, well, pocket in Italian is Tasca, and Tasca tunic sounds great. And I was like, sold. And so we went with Tosca, but it had like a few names, and for a little while there, I couldn't remember its name, and I kept calling it different names. It kept spelling Tosca different ways, like sometimes it had a K, sometimes it had a C, but now I know that it's Tosca with a C. Sometimes naming things is hard, and sometimes naming things is easy. The next two patterns coming up, their names came very quickly, so, and you won't see those till September, but that's my little sneaky hint. So that is everything about Tosca. And towards the end, I'll open it up for Q&A for a few minutes. So if you have any questions, save them for then, and then I'll try to answer a few then, okay? I wanted to update you guys on what's going on with Bluprint, formerly known as Bluprint, formerly known as Craftsy, now Craftsy again. So Craftsy was bought by NBC. They renamed it Bluprint. Bluprint was just bought by a company called TNN Marketing. They are rebranding it to Craftsy, and it should be launching around September 1st. So they have, they have it ready for a multitude of platforms. But one thing that they were doing is on around August 21st, they are shutting down streaming on Roku and like the Fire Stick, if you use that, and both of the apps on Android and Apple. So if you're somebody who uses Bluprint or Craftsy after the 21st, you'll really only be able to access it through a browser, not through an app. I also understand, and this is super important, if you have patterns that you've purchased through Bluprint or Craftsy in the past that are not part of classes, but patterns that you've like purchased from a designer or a sewer, or a pattern that you've gotten from a kit, make sure that you've downloaded all of those, because TNN Marketing did not buy the whole kit aspect of Bluprint Craftsy. They just bought the online classes. So those patterns are not going to be available to you anymore. They're not transferring over. So it's super important in the next few days. I believe you'll still be able to download them till the end of the month, but it shouldn't take you too long to go in and download any patterns that you have purchased that are from a kit or from a designer that you did through because they sold patterns for a while for designers. I know I sold a few that way. So that's pretty important, and I really wanted to update you guys on that. the next thing is Cloudborn Yarn, which was Craftsy and Bluprint's yarn line, which I did a fair number of designs with. All of their yarn was bought by Webs, and it is all linked on the website. So right now, if you go to yarn.com and you click on new or you search Cloudborn, all of their yarn will come up. It is super discounted. They basically had to get like another whole warehouse. Melinda, who's here, who does roller derby, I think it was the warehouse she did roller derby in, and they got booted out of there. So all the Cloudborn yarn could come in there. I asked them if they were going to continue doing the yarns in the future, and they said because they already have their own yarn line, Valley Yarns, that they're going to have to kind of look at what the top performers are that are yarns that they don't already carry and see which one of them maybe they'll continue to carry in the future. So the pricing, like on Cloudborn on the Pima Cotton DK that I use for Pacificus and Novelty, it's at like $5.99 a ball right now, and they have a lot of it. So if you've been waiting on anything that you wanted, now would be a great time to go snag that, because it won't potentially be around forever. And I just wanted to tell you that because I know a few people were waiting to hear that from me. I'll put links below once I go through all the show notes for you guys. I have to basically, to do the show notes, I have to watch this once, and I'll try to do it tonight or tomorrow morning and then give you guys all the links for the things I'm like verbally spewing that I'm going to give you a link for. That part takes a little time. So that's the story for that. I want to tell you guys what I'm knitting. And I'm basically hardly knitting anything. I'm knitting one more thing for Lola's Choice in September just for photography, because the first pattern I did for the Lola's Choice kit that's coming out the 1st of September, my tech editor told me I was batshit crazy. And then I got a little nervous. I had 2 testers test it and they did great, but I still was like, I don't know, it's a little challenging. So I decided to do a simplified version of it, and everybody in Lola's Choice will get both of those patterns, so they can like go batshit crazy or they can go easy on themselves. You know, we trend 2 ways in a pandemic. Some people need like to be so challenged that they can't think about all the other stuff that's going on. And some people just need to like take it down to the basics and not be overstimulated, right? So you got 2 choices with that one. And I'm just working on one to get photos of the second one. That the photos from the first one are so gorgeous, and I want the second ones to I want them to hang well together, if you will. So I'm knitting that, and I'm almost done with that. And then I kind of just have some swatches on the needles, and I still have my Felix cardigan from Amy Christoffers that's on Sleeve Island. Sleeves take forever. So I pick that one up and put it down as I need to. But that's all I have on, and that is because, this is a good segue, that is because I just got yarn in for, I'm waiting for yarn for a Rhinebeck design that I think I can get done in time. I just got yarn in for another one. I also will knit like the wind if I can get that one done to have it ready, at least to show you guys for Rhinebeck weekend. And then I got yarn in for the Knit Ithaca design, which is absolutely amazing. I bought a whole lot of yarn that is 100% Finger Lakes yarn. It is, well, it's milled in New York State, but all of the yarn is from Finger Lakes. It's designed in the Finger Lakes. I was in a meeting. I don't want to tell you guys too much about it because I don't want to ruin everything, but basically I put this call out for a special Finger Lakes yarn that would make sense for Knit Ithaca, and I scored something absolutely amazing, and I just was like, I'll take it all, because I know at some point it'll sell, and I have a very exciting idea for it. And this is my way of saying there is going to be a virtual Knit Ithaca. It is going to be November 6th through 8th. It is going to be basically a Zoom event. I'm going to try to keep it as community oriented as possible so that you guys all have a lot of time to hang out and chat with each other. I have some very fun ideas that I think will be different than anything you've ever done before. There will also be some knitting content, but it won't be like taking knitting classes all weekend, because there's already opportunities for doing that. I'll do some teaching, and the teaching will be based around the design. I'm going to make an absolutely amazing Knit Ithaca kit for you guys and ship it to you guys before the event. And My hope is that no one will open it, and we will open it together at the Friday night ceremonies, like an unboxing. So my hope is that people won't open their boxes, they won't sneak a peek. We will open them together, we will talk about them. You will have the reveal of the design, and you'll get to knit on that design all weekend while you're kind of like experiencing and watching and learning about this beautiful place that I call home. And I promise it'll be fun. I don't, it is not going to be as fun as the real Knit Ithaca because it's going to be virtual and you're going to be on your computers. And I'm not going to even pretend to say that it's going to be exactly the same. I think it would be really fun if you wanted to mask up with somebody who lives near you and maybe like do part of it together, masked and 6 feet apart. If you could figure out a way to do that, or with, if you have anybody that you're in a pod with that also is a knitter, maybe you could do it together and that way have like that community aspect to it. The community aspect is such a huge part of Knit Ithaca, so much of us getting to come together once a year to be together and not sleep a lot and spend a lot of time together. So I'm gonna attempt to recreate that in a virtual setting, and I promise it's going to be different than anything else. And yeah, a real party, Karen. I had to like look down quickly at the comments. I'm doing good not reading them, right? I think it's going to work. I got some fun ideas, and I'm excited for the unboxing. I think that'll keep kind of the surprise and anticipation alive a little bit. So signups, I bet you want to know, are going to open in September, probably by the second week of September. I don't see them going up any sooner than that, maybe a little bit. And if you're in N Club or you're in Lola's Choice, you all are going to have first dibs at spots because there's always a limited amount. There's a limited amount of yarn I bought, and so that's the limited number of spots. It is a lot more yarn and spots than the traditional Knit Ithaca, which is always 53 people because that's how many people we can fit on a bus. So it will be bigger than that. So people who can't make it to Ithaca because it's too far away or too expensive or, whatever reasons are, you don't travel, this will be a chance to experience a little bit of what Knit Ithaca is like for the people who've gotten to go to it. So fingers crossed, right? I think this is going to work. Oh, I know what I want to tell you about. Kit sales have been going crazy strong lately. I've had a few sales. I send out emails when I have sales. If you're not on my email list, that is a great way to find out about when I have a sale. And whenever I send out orders, as long as I have it in stock, because you guys have been like eating it up because orders have been coming in. I've been going through pounds of yeast at a time. I've been sending basically package of yeast with your orders. I buy the yeast bulk from my local restaurant supply place. My new teenager who's been working for me bags it up for me. And what's been really fun about this is people have been baking things and then posting photos of their bakes in our Facebook group. And it's not going to be good for my waistline. And luckily right now we don't have air conditioning, so it's too hot to bake. So I have not been baking at all, but I have like a list of recipes I want to bake. There is a website on this card that you can go to. It's a blog post where you can leave things, recipes that you're making. And I slowly am adding them to that blog post. So there's lots of ideas of things that you can do with your yeast. And it's just kind of like a fun little extra to get with your knitting kit, because the idea is that you can knit your kit while your yeast is in the oven. I see lots of people. Rhinebeck is always the third weekend of October, and I'll put that somewhere. But if you just Google Rhinebeck sheep and wool, dates for that will come right up for you. So yeast comes with your kits. And I'm getting some new ones in. The Princess Lola kits sold out. Those sock kits sold out in like 30 seconds. That was incredibly fast. And I was able to get a little bit more yarn for those, so that'll be here by the end of the month. Not a ton, but some. Okay, so that was the kit thing a little bit. I told you about knitting. Club stuff, I've been working on the 2 club shipments. So part of why I'm not knitting as much is when I get right up close to club shipments, I kind of all my energy goes towards making sure those are put together well and correctly. And Princess Lola, everything's here, but I'm still waiting on some of the yarn, which is great timing. That will definitely go out right on time at the beginning of September. The N Club, almost everything's here, also waiting on the yarn, and the goodie is special and taking longer than anticipated. And I am very excited for you guys to get this goodie, those of you in the N Club. It is, yeah, nothing I've done before, and it's taken a bunch of my time, and it is really fun. I'm putting a lot of love into that one. Let's just say my hands are very involved in your goodie this year. It's an act of love. In life wise, let's see. So we painted our house this year. We're doing, since we can't travel, we're doing all the life projects. And I know there's a few people out there that have a similar situation. And we discovered some problems with my foundation. And when my husband went to Lowe's to get more pressure treated wood to like sure up some spots, it was like all sold out because I think everybody's building decks right now who has land that can build a deck. But he managed to find some. And one of the things we did that was horribly so satisfying last weekend is we cleaned out our crappy shed that raccoons had moved into a winter or two ago. And basically we were both like, I don't see the problem. I don't see the problem. And finally this summer we were like, that is a problem. So we hired my friend's 22-year-old and he came and helped us. And the three of us dealt with the shed. And it was really funny because Caleb had way more energy than we did. And every so often we would be like, we just need to sit down and take a break. We're like 50 and stuff. And we had this like 22-year-old who just like wanted to get it done and go hang out with his friends. But we cleaned out the shed, a giant dumpster full of stuff. We like ripped out. I did not rip out the insulation. I was outside taking nails out of something while they did that. It was a very satisfying weekend and it feels so good to have gotten that done. So I've been really leaning into house projects. My garden's a little bit neglected right now. It hasn't been raining a lot, so things aren't thriving the way that they should be. And I do need to do a weeding round, but not that badly because it hasn't been raining. So I think maybe next time I do a log, we should do a garden tour and show you guys the garden because you saw it in the spring and it's very different looking right now. It's very like late August. There's lots of yellow. There's lots of purple. It's really happy. It's a quite inspiring space to be in. For those of you who know, I have a 20-year-old girl named Bella. She's amazing. She's also been living at home for quite a while, and her school decided to go totally online for the fall. And she decided, with our complete support, that she is going to move to Baltimore with two of her friends that were her roommate from last year and one of her other friends, and they're going to get a house together and do online learning with their own pod and completely developmentally appropriate. I think that they'll do a great job at it. Bella's an awesome social distancer. She understands, what the problems could be, and I think she'll do it well. And I'm like sad and happy all at the same time, which I'm sure makes sense to all of you guys. I'm sure I'm going to be like a little bummed when she leaves. They're still looking for a place. If anybody knows of an awesome house in the Hamden area, let me know. They have one that they want and all their application is in. They just have to wait to see if they're accepted. But I think backups should be looked at because I'm that mom. I'm trying not to be involved and it's really hard not to be like, let me just fix this problem, honey. I'm a real good problem solver. Yeah, you guys all know what I'm talking about. Next up, reading. I am back into reading again. I love reading in waves, and I actually haven't been watching a lot lately because we've been so busy with other projects. And I finally finished Queen Sugar, which I absolutely adored, which I've talked about the last few logs. That was like 4 seasons. I haven't quite like landed into something else yet. Except I watched Eurovision with Will Ferrell. Has anybody seen Eurovision? It is hysterical. It is like, it's kind of awkward because it's a Will Ferrell show and he's a little awkward, but it's based on the European Song Contest. And he's from Iceland, from Husavik, which is this little town that I went to years ago with Max and Bella. It's a whaling town, like in the middle of northern Iceland, kind of a very small town. And it's portrayed as that in the movie. And watch it alone for the Icelandic scenery and the scenes of Husavik and know that it is, just a funny, silly movie. And then they go to Edinburgh to Scotland for the Eurovision contest without ruining too much. That's all in the trailer. And I'll leave you a link below. It's fun. It's a fun family watch, but it's not serious by any stretch of the imagination. Um, Reading, to like squirrel back to reading. I okay, I know a few logs ago I told you guys that when I need a break, I watch the Twilight movies, particularly when I'm traveling. They're all on Amazon Prime. I read all the Twilight books when Bella was like 4 or 5, and they were just like junk, amazing escape reading for me. I am Team Jacob. I like werewolves more than I like vampires. I'm a dog person, more than I'm a bat person. Some of you might be Team Edward. I will still be your friend. Some of you might not know what I'm talking about, and that's fine. Maybe you're reading some better quality books than I am right now. But Stephanie Meyer, the author of the Twilight series, just came out with a new book that is basically her writing fan fiction about her own characters. So she wrote a book from Edward's perspective. Edward is the vampire boyfriend of Bella Swan, and super embarrassing myself right now. And it's like being with old friends. I've been staying up really late at night reading it, and then like waking up and reading a little more and being kind of bad, but whatever. And yeah, it's fine. And basically, I think there's been a lot of fan fiction written about Twilight, and Stephanie was kind of like, I gotta set a few things straight because I know Edward pretty well. And there might be some of you here who read fan fiction or write fan fiction and know more about that element of this Twilight book than I do, because I am not like in the know. I just know I found a book I'm enjoying. To balance out the not super high quality experience of reading the Twilight book. It's called Midnight Sun, by the way. I'll give you that link. I am listening to American Dirt by Jeanine Cummins, and I've wanted to read or listen to that for a while. And when it first came out, there was a lot of controversy over whether it was like a real Latinx story, and it told a story that could potentially happen to somebody. I think a lot of people felt like it was like fantasy and it ended too well or something. I'm really enjoying listening to it. So I'm listening to that while I'm working on Your Secret and Club Goody. And I believe it's a well-told story. I'm only like maybe a third of the way into it, so I can't really speak to the story as a whole. But I'm, I don't know if anybody here has listened to that or read it or has thoughts around it. I'd be happy to talk about it at some point. Maybe we could set something up in the Ravelry group or Facebook group for people who've read that to talk about it a little bit. Because I haven't formed opinions yet, but I know that I'm intrigued by it and continuing to listen to it while I work. So that's a good thing, right? Moving on, I talked about that. Oh, I always tell you about my eating. Like my dietary habits. So basically, I really eat with the seasons right now, and the farm is cranking out foods. My vegetable garden is looking horrible because we haven't been getting rain, and we have a well, and so we need to save our water for like our house. And I try to water the stuff right around the house when necessary. And so the vegetable garden does not get watered, and luckily we belong to a CSA, community supported agriculture. And right now their tomatillos just opened for you pick, and their peppers, and I made salsa verde last night. That was so good. And basically for salsa verde, what I do is I take a bunch of tomatillos and I put them in a baking tray that has sides with like some cut up onion and some pieces of garlic and a bunch of jalapeno. And I roast that at 450 until there's smoke coming out of the oven. You want to get that kind of like roasty flavor to it. And then I throw that into a Cuisinart with a whole bunch of cilantro and a bunch of salt and mix it up, like blend it up, and then we eat it, and then we repeat that again. So it's basically like pick, roast, blend, eat, repeat. I never look at proportions. I kind of like basically pick as many tomatillos as look ripe that I'm allowed to pick for that week, and then I kind of throw stuff in so it seems like it could make sense. And I've never had it not turn out well when I use that very vague method. Some of you might have some salsa verde for people who make it as well. I don't know if any of you do share your recipes. I just so when I paused like that, that's because I made the mistake of looking down at the comments for a second, which I try not to do because I lose my train of thought super quickly. But I saw somebody that asked if I could enable subtitles. For live events, I don't believe I can enable subtitles until after the event is over. Then I enable it in YouTube, and it takes a little bit of time for the subtitles to come out, but I do try to caption everything. I just don't believe I can do it as I'm recording a live event, but I'll research that a little bit. I totally agree with you. I'd be happy to do that for you guys. So that was a good thing for me to lean down. I know I can do it after the fact. I don't know about when it's happening. Otherwise, eating lots of peaches, lots of corn. My stomach doesn't love corn, but my mouth loves corn. That was a little low right there. So I try to only have like one cob a week, and I love it so much. It's so yummy and good. We've been making it on the grill. Sometimes I'll put some butter on it, some salt, and then I eat it up. We have some Trader Joe's chili lime seasoning. That's really good if you put like butter and then chili lime seasoning, and then you eat your corn on the cob. Really good. Oh, we're almost done. How did that happen? We've been going for almost an hour, so I guess I timed myself well. Who knew I could yammer so much for so long? Thank you guys so much for joining me. So one thing I got this week that I have been researching for, I would say 3 years, is a paddleboard. A bunch of years ago, I went paddleboarding for the first time on vacation, and I loved it. And I have rented paddleboards a lot, and I have friends who have paddleboards. And for me to go paddleboarding with them, they would have to meet me where there's a rental, and then I rent it, and then we go out, and then I have to bring back my board, and it's never like the board I want. And I'm always sad to leave my friends because they can float for hours, and I have like a timeline on my rental. So I've been researching and looking and researching and looking, and I promised myself this was the year. And then when I had surgery in the spring, I was like, well, I might as well wait until I feel better before spending money on a board. And then by the time it was time to spend money on a board, they were all sold out because everybody was like, there's nothing to do. I guess I'll buy a paddleboard because there's some water near me, and that's going to be my summer activity, especially people who have kids who are trying to keep them active. So I went to go find one, and they were like, first I couldn't find one. Then the ones that I had been looking at that weren't very expensive were super expensive. So that kind of like started me all over researching and looking. And I ended up finding one that I like from Thurso Surf. It's an inflatable board. I went out this week, got a horrible sunburn on my back. My friend's puppy rode on my board with me. I made up for taking Thursday off doing that by working all weekend this weekend. I can balance my life out. But I feel like paddleboarding is going to become my Nordic skiing. So a lot of you know that cross-country skiing in the winter is like my jam. It's what I do. I adore it. It like brings out all the endorphins for me. And paddleboarding seems to do the same thing. So I'm very happy to have found an outdoor outlet. Around here, it's not so easy. I went to go do it with my father-in-law on Friday, and it ended up being really windy, and there were choppy waves, and it wasn't going to go well. So we ended up having to put all the boards back on the car. And actually, there we went and saw the waves. They were super choppy. We went to another location. I took my board off my car, and then we saw that there are signs that they had just treated the water with pesticide. And I'm a hard no about going into water that has pesticides in it. That's not for me. So I didn't end up getting to go, but I am going to try this evening. If the wind, I'm looking outside, I think the wind is looking calm. So sounds like I'm trying to do a lot this evening. I might not sleep tonight if I get everything done I just said I was going to do tonight. So yeah, paddleboarding, new thing. I'm hoping it's going to help with this part right here. Y'all know what I'm talking about. That's all I'm going to say, because I'm not doing yoga anymore because I really don't enjoy doing yoga online, and there aren't really yoga and people classes around here in person. Yoga and people, I'll miss it. Some of you might have seen on Instagram and Facebook on Friday, I posted these 2 skeins of yarn that I got from Kettle Dyed Yarns from Lancaster Yarn Shop in Intercourse, Pennsylvania, which is totally a place. And it's a thing to say, I had a good time in Intercourse this weekend. What about you? That was a little again, whoops. So this yarn I'm so excited about because I haven't been able to find any domestic dyers that dye this base. And it's one of my favorite bases. It's the base that I use for Pacificus, the original fingering weight Pacificus. And it's the base that I use for Alpaxis. And I sold out of all the rest of the kits I had for Alpaxis, and I couldn't get any more. That was like a special, that dyer went and got the yarn for me and dyed it specially for me. And I ordered extra at the time, but I couldn't get any more. It's 50% baby alpaca, 25% silk, 25% linen. It's got this like incredible weight to it and drape. Those of you that have knit with this yarn before, it's called Linum. I know that you really loved it as much as I did. It's a unique and adored yarn. I love linen and yarn and alpaca because it just gives it this like incredible heft and like lightweight quality to it and just this little bit of halo. So they sent me 2 skeins of yarn as a thank you because I did a Zoom with their yarn shop last Friday night, and these were my thank you gift. And I decided to give away one to people on Instagram and Facebook, and people just had to leave a comment. And so from Instagram, I have a winner, and that is Rusty Sun. Her real name is Karen. And she said, I love the green. I grew up in Pennsylvania and have been to Intercourse. And then she gave a nice big winky face. So I like that. So Karen, you won this green skein of yarn. Congratulations to you. I will, I'll tag you on Instagram so that you know that you won. Thank you guys so much for commenting and tagging your friends on that one. I'll start trying to do more stuff like that. And the other thing I'm starting to do more of is Zoom events with knitting stores and guilds and online. I'm teaching with Knitters Day Out at the end, I guess the 3rd weekend in September. That information is on my website. You're about to hear that I'm teaching at another venue that information will be coming out in a week or 2. Pretty excited about that. And then if you have a yarn store or a guild who's looking for somebody to come talk, I can talk about novice construction, lace, beading. Let me know. Have them reach out to me. I am accepting. For the longest time, I was not accepting this. I was like, this is going to go away. We're going to go back to life as normal. I don't need to teach online. I like seeing people in person. I miss my people. And I've just accepted that right now, it's what's happening, right? So there you have it. I feel like I've told you about everything. So I want to open things up to questions. I'm only going to do this for a tiny bit. So I'm looking down at the comments, but it's really, when I look down at the I see somebody signed up for Knitters Day Out. That will be so fun to have you on class, Mary Ellen. I'm not seeing any questions come in. I have an eye on it. Maybe there's no questions. It is what it is, Kathy. I agree. It's okay if there's no questions. Now I'm just awkwardly talking. Oh, will Ansel work for the tunic? Great question, Veronique. So Ansel is like a light fingering weight yarn. And if you have any of it there to swatch with, that is a yarn I would audition. I feel like you might be able to get Ansel at the sport weight gauge, and it'll have a little bit of air in between the stitches. Will you try it? I think you have some there. If not, I have a tiny ball I would be happy to send you. You've been such a helpful tester for me in the past, for you to try it to see, because that would be great to know. That Ansel from Jill Draper Make Stuff is gorgeous. I love that yarn. A linen silk yarn for Tasca. Cecilia Moore, try Anzula Vera. I think that would be the yarn that I could think of that would be the best. Essence of Autumn also has a yarn, but I think she sold out of it really quickly. So Anzula Vera would be a great choice for that. I'll give you guys a link to Knitters Day Out, but Melanie, if you want to do that more quickly, if you just Google Knitters Day Out and then click on classes, and then scroll down to each of the instructors and like click on one of them, the classes will come up. I believe their website hasn't been updated and it still says registration opens August 12th, but registration is open. And then you can click on each day and see which classes are each day at each time slot and then sign up from there. It's not hard, but it looks like it's not open, but it totally is. That event is run by volunteers. So, it's hard to find the volunteers that do websites and the volunteers that do marketing and the volunteers that like work with instructors. It's a lot. Oh, can I spell Anzula? So Anzula, and then Vera, Vera. There you go. Would spun right around DK with some needle jiggering for sport weight Tosca crop. Mary Ellen, you wouldn't need to do any needle jiggering because that is the yarn that I used on Tosca Baby and Tosca Kids. And Tosca Baby and Tosca Kids have the same gauge as the Sport Tosca. The Sport Tosca really works with Sport or DK. It's just if you have more or less air in between the stitches. It's like very adjustable. Sport DK yarns, I find it's just about how densely or loosely something's knit to be able to get gauge. There we go with Anzula Vera. Thanks, you guys. Placing out the stripes. Good questions. Mine are so perfectly spaced. The way that you get perfectly spaced stripes, and we can talk about this in the KAL thread, is I looked at the pattern, I counted the rows for the shoulder, the rows for the neckline, the rows for the shoulder. I put that out on a piece of graph paper. I grabbed some colored pencils, and then I went to town. And that's how, and I started from the center, so I found the center line of the neckline, and I knew that I wanted the gold to be there, and then I worked out. It took me a few times to figure out what the repeat was going to be for the stripes, but every size is different. So that is where you get to play. If you need help figuring out the rows, it's actually written into the pattern for the right shoulder, the neckline, and the left shoulder. I made sure to include that because I knew people were going to want it. But if you need help, let me know and I'll help you with the breakdown to get you going with that coloring sheet. Okay. Jill's Empire yarn for Tosca, I think, Susie, would be a little heavy because that's more like an Aran weight. So I think even at the gauge for the worsted weight Tosca, it might end up being a very dense tunic. And again, if you have a ball of that, which I know you do because you've knit with it before, because you did your artichoke French hoodie with that, maybe try a swatch and book it according to the instructions and then see what you think. You can tell my answer is always like, audition your yarn. You'll find out pretty quickly. There we go. I'm not seeing any more questions. Remember, if you want to be part of the Zooms for Tasca, buy the collection. You'll have a PDF there that has the dates for those Zooms, and then email me to sign up. Crystal, we'll talk about adjusting length in the knit along for Tosca, or you're going to be in the Zoom. So we'll do that in the Zoom, but I think I would start going into math here, which I'm not prepared to do right now. Bless your hearts. Yep, Knit Ithaca, November 6th to 8th. Virtual, not live, but I'll be even more fun than this. I'm going to drink a lot of caffeine that weekend, which means I'm like a party animal. That's all I really need is like influxes of caffeine. Not alcohol. That makes me sleepy. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I really appreciate you spending time with me. And if you're watching this later, I hope you got some good knitting done because you weren't typing in the comments while I was chatting away. And leave any comments below if you have any questions for me below in the YouTube. I also set up a thread for this in Ravelry. I'm not going to do a giveaway this time because I just did that yarn giveaway, but I do them as the spirit moves me. I'm not the best at marketing because I'm not like a regular scheduled structured human. I like to have a little like go with how's the spirit moves me, and I think y'all are okay with that. So thank you again, and I will see you soon. Okay, take care of yourselves, wear your masks, figure out how you're going to vote, and stay healthy and safe. And I love you.